Hello, Black Eagles, and welcome back to the Black Eagles podcast YouTube channel. Today, we are back with another European preview for you for one of our European opponents, the upcoming match against Malmö on the 6th of November, on Wednesday, actually. So make sure to make note of that. And the match will be played very early on, already at 16:30 Central European time. Fortunately, with the change of time zones, or clock change, I should say, for the winter hour, I suppose. The match is locally played at 6:30 p.m., so that means 18:30 in the afternoon. So for people in Turkey, fans going to the stadium, it's not super early yet, although 18:30 is kind of early on a weekday, I would say. Joining me today to talk about Malmö is Niklas Jarelind, a Swedish football journalist for the Swedish television. Niklas, thank you very much for joining us and giving us your time to tell us a little bit more about the current reigning Swedish champions, because they just bagged another title.
Yes, just been crowned Swedish champions again. It's quite common nowadays.
Yeah,
Malmö is undisputably the best team in Sweden.
They beat Göteborg the other day, another big team in Sweden. I noticed Göteborg aren't having a great season, though. They're one of the bigger cities, if I'm not mistaken, in Sweden as well, next to Stockholm and I guess Malmö. I'm not sure how big of a city Malmö is.
It's the third biggest city in Sweden, so those are the only three big cities, if you even can call Malmö a big city if you compare it to Istanbul and whatever.
Yeah. Well, congratulations to Malmö, of course. They backed their championship already. A very different layout to the season, of course, in Sweden than in most European countries. Their season is already coming to a close now. I believe only 2 or 3 matches left in the campaign for the Swedish clubs. Do you think that is going to play any part in this game against Beşiktaş or not? Because they're still in full flow right now, so I imagine it's not a handicap for them.
No, it shouldn't be. Maybe if you get into December and even more so in January or February, when the Swedish players are just starting their preseason normally, but now it shouldn't affect them.
Yeah. Do you think that winning the championship already, if that's going to have any impact on this game? Because perhaps the team is deflated a little bit after a long and strenuous season. Winning the championship, maybe some over-the-board celebrations. Do you think that could have any impact on this fixture?
Maybe if it was this week, then might be a little hangover, but I don't really think so either, because they play Hammarby, which is second in the league, in the next round. So there's a lot of prestige in that game. So I don't think they will be too deflated. No.
Yeah. Okay, so this game is, of course, next week, but we're already recording this today on the 30th of October. I think they're playing Hammarby then this weekend, right?
Yes.
So it's a big game for them, I suppose. Still for the honors, really, because they have obviously already won the league. But like you said, Hammarby are in second position. So let's talk a little bit about the match on Wednesday and how they actually got there, because Malmö were in the Champions League qualifiers this season, and of course they are a semi-regular participant in the Champions League group stages over the last couple of years as well. They didn't make the league stages this season, unfortunately, because they got knocked out by Sparta Prague in the final qualifying round. But they did beat Kiev from the Faroe Islands, if I'm not mistaken. 4-1 at home and then 3-2 defeat in Faroe. But then they eliminated the Greek champions, PAOK. And somebody who was instrumental in that, I noticed, is Nanasi, who has now since joined Strasbourg in France. Is he somebody that Malmö are going to miss or are missing already in their current Europa League campaign, you think?
Well, of course, he's now a national player for Sweden. He scored twice against Estonia, just the other game for Sweden. They have other good players, but I think average goal scored by Malmö was close to 3 when he was still in the team, and now it's like 1.5 per game. So it's an impact, of course, but they haven't played in another way or something like that. They have another young player called Hugo Bolin in that place, or maybe the dribbler Taha Ali, and they also brought in Sead Haksabanovic, who's been somewhat of a rising star in Swedish football for some time, but he's injured now. But no, they have it covered.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about their coach, Per-Erik Rydström. Is that correct, or is it just Henrik that
Almost.
they call him?
Henrik Rydström.
Oh, Henrik Rydström. Okay, I preferred Per-Erik. Sounds cooler. Henrik is so common.
Yeah.
But how long has he been in charge of Malmö?
This is his second season as the coach for Malmö. He was in 2 smaller Swedish clubs before, making better and better results there, and then Malmö snatched him ahead of last league season.
Yeah, they seem to do that with a lot of local talent as well. I noticed, I believe, Bolin that you just mentioned, I think they just signed him. Is that correct? Or
No, he was on a loan last season, so he wasn't playing for Malmö then.
Okay, and then Erik Botheim is also somebody I noticed. I believe he played in the Serie A briefly as well, but they just acquired him, I think. And then there's a couple of familiar names actually for Turkish football fans, because Johan Dalin, who's their goalkeeper, he played for Gençlerbirliği for 2 seasons in the Turkish league, and also the striker Isak Kisatelin. He played, I believe, 1.5 seasons for Kasımpaşa, scored quite a few goals. How important are those experienced players for Malmö? Because Dalin is already 38 years old.
Yeah, they're very important. I actually looked it up when I know that I was going to be in here. Johan Dalin never faced Beşiktaş, but the second goalkeeper, Ricardo Friedrich, he was also in, excuse my pronunciation, but Ankaragücü.
That's very good, yeah.
Maybe. He played Beşiktaş a couple of times. Never won a game though. And Isak Kisatelin, who was the most prolific goal scorer last season, is scored 15 in 28 games this season. He beat Beşiktaş in April 2021 with Kasımpaşa. And also Jens Stryger Larsen, who's played in Udinese in Italy. He also played Beşiktaş a couple of times when he was in Trabzonspor. So
right.
It's quite some familiar names.
Yeah, I even forgot about Larsen. He was, I think he won the league with them, didn't he? Wasn't he there?
Yeah.
I think he did.
That's right.
League, yeah. So about the coach, he's 48 years old. That's still relatively young in the coaching realm. What type of a coach would you say is he? What type of lineup does he prefer tactically, and what type of football does he have Malmö playing?
Well, he comes from a 4-2-3-1 formation in the smaller teams, but now he has a lot more players, better players to choose from. So he's actually been quite dynamic with the formation. Sometimes it's 4 backs, and sometimes it's 3. And he can also play with 1 striker or 2 strikers. So it's quite up to what type of game that he anticipates and what kind of opponents there are. So it's hard to tell whether it's going to be 1 or 2 strikers. I think there will be 2, because they will be aiming to win this game, although they know it's going to be a tough one. But I would guess it would be something like a 4-4-2 formation.
Okay, and what type of football do they really play? Is it like high intensity? Is it more controlled? What type of what type of philosophy do they utilize?
Well, he likes to keep the ball. It's not like Guardiola's tiki-taka, but I think in a Swedish context, it might be sometimes. They really like to control the game and have a lot of ball, but it's hard to compare when meeting teams in Sweden that is not on the top 5, and it will be another game, of course, against the Beşiktaş. They won't be able to control the ball as much, but that's what they want to do. And you can, if you look at the statistics, it's very clear they don't use a lot of crosses. They're actually quite bad at crossing into the penalty area, and don't create a lot of chances that way. So they like to keep the ball on the ground and pass their way forward.
Very similar to Beşiktaş then, because they also prefer combining over the ground, but they cross a little bit more, unfortunately, and that's not the strength of the team either. One more thing that you also mentioned off air is that you have a couple of stories, because you have been at some of the previous games between Beşiktaş and Malmö, because of course they've played each other, I believe, on 2 separate occasions before, so 4 games in total, or even more than that. I believe early in the 2000s in the UEFA Cup there was a match. I remember Alexandra Jonsson telling me about that she was there and that she got some, I hope it was beer, poured over her head when she was a little child. And then, of course, a couple of years ago in the Europa League group stages as well, when Malmö beat Beşiktaş. What do you remember from those matches?
Yeah, I was commentating that game in 2018 in December when Malmö beat Beşiktaş, and I don't really remember the game that well. I do remember the goal because it was, of course, a big victory for Malmö. They didn't really, and we didn't really think they were going to beat Beşiktaş that time. And of course, the red card for Ricardo Quaresma, and mostly I remember that when the game was over, a disappointed staff at the arena just turned off the lights and went home. And I stayed at my commentary position to listen to the interviews and the studio and so on. So maybe half an hour, 40 minutes later, I was gonna go out, and the arena was closed. So I had to break out of the stadium, climbing over a fence, and that was quite adventurous.
That sounds like quite the adventure, and a little bit sore losers from our part for sure. I'm not a big fan of what they do.
I can appreciate that too.
How did you enjoy the stadium? Because it, of course, was the new stadium already, which Beşiktaş have been playing in since 2016.
Yeah, that was nice. I think I don't recall exactly what went on, but of course there was a good atmosphere.
And did you have any time at all to spend in Istanbul then, or was it just to the game and back to Sweden straight away?
We came late the night before, so didn't have really much time. We went out to eat in a restaurant close by the hotel, but I had a little stroll through the city, and I've also been there some other time to look at the city a little bit more. But it's a big city, so you don't really cover the whole of it in just a couple of days.
Yeah, I'm from Belgium, and Istanbul is essentially as big as the country I live in, so it's pretty crazy, of course. And the Beşiktaş area is one of the historic areas of the city, so there's a lot of nice stuff to see. Any chance you're going to the game now? I think you mentioned that your channel or your employer doesn't have the Europa League rights anymore, so I assume you aren't going?
No, I'm not going to this one. We only right now have the Allsvenskan, the Swedish league, so unfortunately.
Okay, well that is unfortunate. Maybe you would have brought Malmö some luck, because last time, as you say, they did win. Beşiktaş were in a bad season form that season. Really, Beşiktaş haven't been so good in Europe ever since their great Champions League run in 2017-2018, and then since then it's really been downhill. Malmö have had some Champions League runs in that time. So far in the Europa League, things have gone okay, I would say. The home defeat to Rangers and a home defeat to the reigning Conference League champions Olympiacos. Perhaps Rangers is a team that Malmö should be getting points against, but then they did get points against Karabakh, who of course had a fantastic European campaign last time around, but are one of the teams at the bottom of the Europa League at the moment with 0 points. Malmö and Beşiktaş both on 3 points. Beşiktaş also lost 2 matches against Ajax and against Frankfurt, and then got a somewhat unexpected away win against Lyon. This game is extremely important for Beşiktaş. I think now the quote-unquote easier matches in their schedule are starting to come up with back-to-back home games against Malmö and Maccabi Tel Aviv. And with all due respect, of course, compared to Lyon, compared to Ajax, compared to Frankfurt, these are games that Beşiktaş, if they want to advance, should be winning. How are Malmö looking towards this? Because, of course, Glasgow Rangers is a big name. Olympiacos just won the Conference League. They're a big name as well. Karabakh, of course, was a match probably they wanted to win. Do they see Beşiktaş as one of those matches that they have to win as well if they want to advance to the next stages?
I don't think they see it as secure 3 points in any way. You're right about they thought they were gonna beat, or at least have a good chance to beat, Rangers at home, and then Karabakh was on the other way. They were not favorites ahead of that game, so it might be a little disappointment. There's only 3 points from these 3 games, at least 4 or maybe even 6 points, but depends on how you look at it. If you're a Malmö supporter, you think you're gonna win every game. That's just the way it is. And from my perspective, of course, Beşiktaş is a quite big favorite after all.
Yeah. Well, hopefully that is how it's going to pan out. It did not, for us, of course, it did not pan out like that last time around, because, as you mentioned, Malmö beat us. So definitely not a game where I think you can write down the 3 points already. Of course, you can never really do that in football. But Malmö certainly not an opponent to be underestimated, as they are the reigning Swedish champions after all. And, you know, they did beat PAOK, for example, the Greek champions in the qualifiers. So that is no small feat either. We already talked a little bit about their players. I had a look at the squad. It seems like there's a lot of experience in the squad. There's a lot of older players, and then mixed with a couple of really young, talented players. You've already highlighted a couple of them, but who are the players that Beşiktaş should be watching out for the most, you think?
Well, of course, they have their. He's not a captain anymore, but he's played in Leeds and Brentford and Torino. Pontus Jansson. In the back 4, which I think it will be, could be a back 3 also. Both the fullbacks, Gabriel Busanello and Jens Stryger Larsen, as we mentioned earlier, in Udinese and Trabzonspor, really good players. And the leader on the pitch, and perhaps the best player in all of Sweden, Swedish league, is a 34-year-old midfielder, Anders Christiansen. He's a box-to-box midfielder with a great shot from distance as well. But you can also have a look at Taha Ali, which I saw a couple of weeks ago. He was, according to statistics, he was like the 3rd best dribbler in the world. I don't know exactly how you measure that, but he had like an 88 from a 100-point scale on that index that I read. It was Mohamed Kudus in West Ham and Ferreira dos Santos in Sao Paulo, which I never heard about. But those two had a higher dribbling rate than Taha Ali, so that's someone to look out for. He's not a great goal scorer. He actually scored against Göteborg now when they were crowned champions, but that was his first goal in the league this season. But yeah, he can move the ball around and the opponent.
I assume he's a winger, or where does he play?
Yeah.
Sounds like pretty typical, like a really good dribbling winger that is probably a little wasteful, not the best finisher, something like that.
Yeah, if he scored like 10, 12 or 15 goals in a season, he would not be in the Swedish league now.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much for that. One more thing. Malmö's strengths and weaknesses. What would you say are their strongest suits? What would you say are their weaknesses? What should Beşiktaş look to exploit if they want to beat the Swedish champions?
It's a little hard to compare because they're so so much better than really all the teams, even though they of course lost a couple of games this season. But overall, they're so much better than the Swedish team. So they're top one in almost every ranking that you can look at if you look at the statistics. But as I mentioned, they don't, which is quite strange because they have Isak Hiestertelin and Erik Botheim up front. They're two pretty big players, pretty strong players, but they don't use the crossing, and when they do, they're not good at it at all. So that's maybe a weakness, but of course they're good with the ball on the ground, so perhaps maybe not. They often use a quite high pressure, but it's not that intense, which is strange. I don't know if it's because they don't have to be that intense in Sweden, or if they are not maybe able to do it. But there are often areas to play in behind them. Most of the Swedish teams don't really succeed at that, but there's an opportunity for a bigger and better team like Beşiktaş, I think. They almost a third of their goals that they have let in this season is on counter attacks. So there's a possibility, but I don't really see that kind of game that Beşiktaş will be the counter-attacking team in this game.
Beşiktaş are a team that likes to win the ball high up the pitch and then transition really quickly to the opponent's half under Giovanni Van Bronckhorst. So they're definitely a team that likes to prey a little bit on that counter attack to an extent. So Scandinavian teams tend to have the stigma of being really good on set pieces. Is that true for Malmö, or is the crossing issue that you are highlighting more an open play thing, or does it also translate to their set pieces? Do they have a lack of goal scoring proficiency from set pieces as well?
Well, they have a lack of it right now. They're best in the league again. They scored 10 goals from corners and a couple in the Swedish Cup in the spring. But every one of those goals, except for one, has come before the summer break, which we have in Sweden in the middle of the league. So it was Nanasi, as you mentioned before. He went on to Strasbourg in France. He was the main corner taker, and also Derek Cornelius, who plays for Canada and now for Olympique Marseille. He was one of the threats on the set pieces. So both of them left in the summer, and now they stopped scoring. But yeah, they're not bad, but they're not as good as they perhaps should be and have been.
Do you think that the lack of resistance in the Swedish league is adversely affecting them in Europe?
It could be if you look at it over some time, but it shouldn't be. I mean, their aim with they have a couple of Champions League millions in the bank now. That's why they are so much better than other Swedish teams right now. They have a lot more money, and they are preparing to be competitive in Europe as well, not just enter the group stage, but winning games and really challenge the type of teams that Beşiktaş are in the hierarchy.
Okay, well, Niklas, thank you very much for your time and giving us your insights on Malmö and the upcoming opponent. Don't forget to check out our other videos as well. People for watching, thank you very much for watching, of course, as always. Check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/Beşiktaş podcast for more early access content like this. You will get access to videos like this straight away on our Patreon channel. On YouTube, you'll have to wait a little bit longer. But thank you for watching. And again, thank you, Niklas, for joining us and giving us your insights. I hope the viewers learned a lot today about Malmö, who are definitely going to be a tough cookie for us, but a must-win game for Beşiktaş if they want to advance to the next round. So that game is on Wednesday, the 6th of November at 16:30 Central European Time. Don't forget to set your alarm clocks for that if you're working. Maybe you have to get out of work early if you're in Central Europe. If you're in Turkey, it's at 6:30 p.m., so 18:30. That's a little bit later. But if you're planning on going to the match, again, maybe you have to get out of work a little bit early because Istanbul traffic can be murder. Anyway, thank you for watching and see you again for the next European preview, which will then be Maccabi Tel Aviv. Thank you. Bye bye.